Hey, what's going on, everybody? Justin here, and in this video I want to continue my series of looking up recent-ish history book releases that I just completely missed and did not notice at the time. I've also done some medieval, Middle Ages history ones as well as a Roman history one. So if those are more your thing, I'll leave links to those in the description below. But I'm really glad I checked in on this Greek history one because there is like a book series that I'll talk about pretty quickly on that it's crazy expensive, but it's gonna be so good, and I don't know, I'm just really glad I at least know about it now. But yeah, let's just go ahead and get started. Now, these first two books, actually, I went looking for this topic a little bit on its own, and these are like kind of Greek athletics or Greek Olympic Games, things like that. And the reason is, David over at David Novak Reads Poetry had talked about some kind of books on like the ancient Greek Olympics and stuff, and I said, I read a couple, but I haven't read anything like super modern on them. And I went looking for them, and I found two-ish. So these are the only ones that aren't published, I think, in since last fall. But anyways, we got The Crown Games of Ancient Greece, Archaeology, Athletes, and Heroes by David Lunt, and this came out in 2022. But this one's really cool. It doesn't deal with just the Olympic Games, from what I could tell. It deals with the Isthmian Games, the Pythian Games, and the Nemean Games. And the four of them kind of combined sort of make the quadfecta of I guess Greek athletics and everything. But it kind of deals with not just the sports per se, because a lot of the other games deal with drama, poetry, recitation, musical stuff, all kinds of things. And I think it's got a lot to do with kind of the cultural impact of the games and kind of what did you expect when you go there, when you come back, if you win, you lose, all that kind of stuff. So it just sounds like a really good kind of overview of, I guess, the Greek sports scene as a whole, just as attending and what I mean, and there was a bunch of local games as well besides the four really big ones. So that one just sounds really interesting. It's just sounds like a kind of a Greek history of sports in a way. Okay, and next up we have something kind of similar. We got The First Physical Culturists, Ancient Greek Athletics, Training, and Competition by Alex Dolat, and this came out in 2020, so it's a bit older than some of the others on this list and everything. But this one seems to be focused more on actual Greek training, Greek athletics, in the sense of how did they, when they went to the gymnasium, what did they actually do for exercises? How did they get stronger or practice their techniques? Different things like that. There was a whole ton of different events, between different running events, more physical ones such as running, or excuse me, wrestling, the Pankration, which was essentially UFC fighting. There was boxing, and then you got kind of some of the more technical things with the throwing stuff, the different jumps and everything. And then you had to have all-rounded athletes with the decathlon, pentathlon, things like that. So I think it's all about, it's kind of, from what I could read from the synopsis, it's kind of a blending of kind of just Greek cultural and philosophical thought on aesthetics, and training and stuff, and actually combining it with the actual real world practice of participating in games, in competition and stuff. So it's not, like I said, it's just it just sounded like a really kind of weird blend of cultural stuff and just pure training science. It just sounded really interesting. I'm not 100% sure how well they're gonna mesh together in an actual book and everything, but I will be picking it up if I ever see it and it goes on sale for sure. All right, so those are kind of the two older ones. Like I said, I don't know, I just kind of went on a rabbit hole of Olympic stuff after that conversation. But yeah, definitely check out David Novak's channel. He's got really good content as well. So next up, we got three books kind of on the same topic. And this first series here is the Oxford History of the Archaic Greek World. And apparently this just started coming out last year in the fall of 2023. The first two volumes are out. Volume 1 is Argos to Corcyra, and Volume 2 is Athens and Attica. And apparently what this series is going to do is cover pretty much all the major Greek city-states that existed, apparently, during the kind of the Archaic Age, which would be roughly out of the Dark Ages, so probably somewhere around 850, 800 BCE down to the beginning of the Classical Age, which is usually considered the Greco-Persian Wars. So roughly 800 to 500, I would say. But I think there's approximately 900 to 1100 or something like that Greek city-states. They're obviously not going to cover every single one, but all the major ones. This first volume, I think, has I think 6 or 7 city-states, and each one gets about like 70 or 80 pages of material from what I could tell. And it's dealing with kind of like, you know, the geographic location, kind of its like brief history, different like kind of political, military, legal stuff kind of going on, as well as all the different kind of like cultural traditions, stuff like that that are associated with that city, as well as their different kind of economics. So like, you know, were they known for agriculture, producing wine, producing olive oil, you know, trade, all that kind of stuff. I don't know, it just sounds really awesome. It sounds like, oh geez, where's that book? All 3 of these books, I'm going to list another one after this one. I really enjoyed A History of the Greek City-State 700 to 338 by Raphael Seeley. And this feels like that between these 2 and the next one, it's just going to be like a complete update to that sort of thing. But I just love a lot of these city-states. Sparta and Athens always get like all the credit. As you can see, like Athens has basically its own volume and everything. But you know, when like Massalia gets one, Syracuse, let's see, some of the, Miletus, things like that. Thebes, especially. I'm gonna be like super excited just to like have material just on like those ones. So I don't know. It's a very specialist thing, but I think they're gonna be super cool. That's gonna be like a thing I'm gonna keep like an eye out for sure. So the next one is not necessarily on a specific Greek polis, but it is Polis, A New History of the Ancient Greek City-State from the Early Iron Age to the End of Antiquity by John Ma. And this one looks like a definite update to the one I just showed you. It's kind of just a history of the concept and idea of the polis over time, and when I looked at kind of the table of contents, deals from literally like the, you know, the beta stage before the polis were actually anything, down to kind of their formation, and then obviously kind of during like kind of their heyday and everything. But then it also deals with sort of the after, well, first they deal with the Roman kind of imperial rule. A lot of these Greek city-states, you know, still existed just under like Roman hegemony, and then kind of into like their fall and decline, as well as some more like kind of just topical overviews of different things. It just sounds really cool. I'm always just fascinated with the whole concept of the, you know, the city-state back then. Just, it's so different from a lot like anything modern that we really have, and I don't know, it kind of worked, it kind of didn't work in a lot of ways, but you always just kind of have like those magical moments when the Greek city-states actually, like, you know, would work together every now and then just to get something accomplished, whether that's something like the Olympic Games, you know, or like, you know, fighting in the Greco-Persian Wars, and then, you know, the other 98% of the time when they're at each other's throats and basically getting nothing done. I don't know, this one just sounds like a really cool kind of overview, up to date kind of reworking of what we know about the concept of the Greek polis. All right, so like I said, those 3 kind of go together, and the first 2 kind of go together, and then these 3 do not go together in any way, shape, or form. So next up is Alexandria, the City That Changed the World by Islam Isa. And I have no idea how I like totally missed this one, but it's literally just a history book of the entire history of the Greek city of Alexandria, from its like origins with the I'm sure there's actually probably a settlement before Alexander, you know, founds Alexandria and stuff. So I think it's dealing from that time onwards all the way to like the modern era. So I think that's just gonna be really cool. Alexandria is just kind of like, in the ancient world, it is like the de facto like center of like intellectual thought and like learning and everything, even more so than Athens and stuff once Alexandria is established. Obviously there's like that giant lighthouse, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world that everyone loves as well. But the Library of Alexandria, you know, has its own history, the largest storage of like knowledge and material in the ancient world. Went through several different fires, several different reasons, everything like that. I don't know, it just sounds like a really cool, fascinating book. Plus, like I said, I don't know anything about like kind of towards the, you know, the last like, you know, 1,000 years into like the modern era. Don't know anything really about Alexandria, so I think that'll be just like a really cool kind of overview of the entire history of like a really, really important city. Next up is kind of like Greek tangentially related. It's Macedonian. I know some people split hairs over, you know, Macedonia is not really Greek and this and that sort of the other thing. But I figured I wasn't going to do a video just on like Macedonian books, so I did include one. And this one is The Third Macedonian War and the Battle of Pydna, Perseus' Neglect of Combined Armed Tactics and the Real Reasons for Roman Victory by Graham Wrightson. Now, Rome and Macedonia fought two major pitched battles. They have the Battle of Mountaineer, and then like the generation before, there was the Battle of Cynocephalae. And these battles are always like kind of like taken together as, you know, look, this is why the Roman Manipular Legion is just, you know, straight up objectively better than the Macedonian phalanx that had been dominating you know, that part of the world for 200 years. But this apparently has like a different lens on why Rome won. So apparently the argument is not that Rome's legions were better in any way, shape, or form. It was just like Perseus sucked, apparently, just from like the little blurbs and stuff I was reading. So I'm more just intrigued on the whole argument. Like, even if you argue Perseus did a bad job, that doesn't necessarily like explain away if the Legion is actually just, you know, a superior like fighting system, and more, you know, mostly through its like flexibility and whatever, than kind of like just a phalanx wall of pikes and everything. So I'm kind of interested in reading just to see how much of like what his argument is, like theoretically Perseus like did a better job running the war and everything, and say he like won that battle, like, you know, like either phalanxes, they're just gonna like steamroll over you. Like, I don't think so. So I'm not kind of 100% sure like what the real argument behind it is, but it's intriguing nonetheless. And then lastly, we have kind of a philosophy related one. We got The Shadows of Socrates, The Heresy, War, and Treachery Behind the Trial of Socrates by Matt Gatton. And this came out earlier this year. And I recently started a philosophy Discord and everything. So I've been kind of trying to look up a little bit more books on, I guess, like philosophical, like related histories and everything. This one sounds really interesting in the sense of Socrates is pretty famous for kind of accepting his like execution and everything. There's several of Plato's dialogues and even like some of Xenophon's literally dealing with, you know, the trial, the apology of Socrates, as well as kind of like his like meetings with his friends, like sort of in the aftermath there. And he probably, from everything I've read, he probably could have, like, you know, found a way out of it and stuff, but just like chose not to. But anyways, kind of there is a bit of there is a bunch of political stuff sort of going on behind the scenes. Like if you look at only just purely like from the philosophical stuff, you'll probably miss out on a few things. But the Peloponnesian War had recently just ended 3 or 4 years before, and at the end of the Peloponnesian War, Athens was basically ordered by Sparta to come up with like a new constitution or whatever, and they were kind of like hemming and hawing about it. And then so Sparta said, no, you're gonna have 30 oligarchs now, and they're gonna like do it. And then it became known as the rule of the 30 tyrants. And instead of like forming and like coming up with a new government, the 30 just decided, you know, we'll just like be the new government. But yeah, they had tons of executions. I think it was like in the thousands. I feel like I think Aristotle said it was like, can't remember exactly. It was over 1,000 anyways. But yeah, just, you know, tons of abuses of power and everything. But they only lasted about like it was just under a year. And then, you know, the Athenian democracy kind of like did a coup and came back. But it's actually during this Athenian democracy that Socrates is actually tried and, you know, convicted and then executed and everything. And I think what this book is going to be dealing with is sort of, a lot of people had resentment of, like, you know, the rule of the 30 and the oligarchy and everything. And some of Socrates' thoughts and stuff are not always super pro-democratic. You know, you have a lot of kind of pro-aristocratic thought and everything. So I think the idea here is I'm like I said, I don't know exactly because I haven't read the book yet, but it just sounds like it's going to be a lot of kind of, it was there sort of some, you know, with the corruption of the youth charge that he's given, is that a lot of kind of more anti-democratic stuff that they're kind of veiling it with and things like that. I don't know. It just sounded really interesting. I hope I did an okay job kind of explaining what I thought it would be. But anyways, there you have it. Those are 8 books on Greek history that I've never talked about, but I'm really glad I kind of like went back to looking them up. Let me know down in the comments below what your favorite book of Greek history is. I'll see if I've read it or not. I've read quite a few, but, you know, I could always do a lot better. But whether you're reading books on Greek history or not, always remember, read victoriously.